Hello, this is Professor James Strickler, and this is Political Science 1101, American Government. This lesson is from Unit 1, Theories in Government, and this is Lesson 5, about the social contract. In this lesson, you'll learn what is the social contract. You'll learn who are the parties to the social contract. You'll learn what is popular sovereignty. You'll learn about the right to revolution. And you'll learn about the concept of tacit consent. So let's begin by asking, what is the social contract? We can get an idea of what the social contract is by looking at a quote from the philosopher John Locke. John Locke points out that whoever out of a state of nature unites into a community must be understood to give up all the power necessary to the ends for which they unite into society. Now think about what that means. There were some ends for which they united to join society. There was something they wanted to accomplish. Maybe most basically they didn't want anyone to come kill them. Or they didn't want anyone to come steal their stuff. So they unite together, and when they do, they give their new community, their government, enough power that they can accomplish that thing that they wanted them to do. Stop people from killing them. Stop people from stealing their stuff. Now, there's something implicit in this. If they give them all the power necessary to accomplish that thing that needs to be done, what about the rest of their power? Where is it at? Well, from there we get an idea that the people keep it. That we're going to discuss a lot more as this course goes along. But for now, realize that we're talking about some basic boundaries being created on government. We're saying that there's some things they're supposed to do and some things that they're not supposed to do. Well, when we enter into any sort of agreement with someone or something, and we set rules about what they can or can't do, we will do that usually through a contract of some sort. And so the idea that we enter into some sort of agreement where we give up the liberty to do certain things, as we discussed in the previous lesson. We give up the liberty to kill people. We give up the liberty to steal from people in exchange for now some government keeping us safe from other people trying to kill us, other people trying to steal from us. We can then call this the social contract. And the idea that such things can be brought into existence is social contract theory. This is what Hobbes and Locke were engaged in as they theorized about where government came from. Social contract theory. The idea that government comes from some sort of agreement among people, some sort of a contract among people to create a society. And that then is the legitimate origin of government power. Well, if Hobbes and Locke are right, that that's where legitimate government comes from, and certainly the founding fathers who read these men came to that conclusion. Well, if they are right about that, who are the parties to this social contract? Who is this agreement between? Well, let's look at another quote from John Locke that may help us figure this out. John Locke says that there only is political society. In other words, this is the only condition under which these communities, this government that we're talking about can exist, can legitimately exist. Well, it can only legitimately exist where every one of the members hath quitted their natural power that they had in the state of nature. Now, I have highlighted in blue the word hath because it's past tense. We're talking about that civil society can only exist where sometime prior to that, the members gave up their natural power. Now, this will help us to understand something, and that is that you can't enter into an agreement with something that doesn't exist yet. If the agreement you're entering into is the thing that's going to create the government to then protect you, you can't actually be entering into that contract with the government. Now, this is what people would most naturally answer to that question that I had just on the 2 slides before about who are the parties to the social contract. I bet if I had asked you and had you in a room and said, who are the parties, you would probably say, oh, it's between the people and the government. That's what people almost always say. But I want you to understand that that's incorrect, because it's the thing that creates the government. And you can't enter into a contract with something that doesn't exist yet. So who is the contract between then? It's between the people and the people. When this contract is entered, you can imagine in a small setting, a bunch of people sitting around a fire out in the wilderness deciding that they've had enough of killing each other. And they decide, okay, I will not try to kill you anymore, and you don't try to kill me anymore. They're entering into a contract with each other. And as part of that contract, they'll set up some sort of enforcement mechanism. They'll create a government and a police force that will make sure they both obey what they've agreed to do. But the contract is between them, the people, because the government doesn't even exist yet. Now, with this in mind, that the people are the ones who are creating this government, we can next ask ourselves, in this sort of situation, the ideal of government created under social contract theory, who is sovereign? Who is the ultimate authority in society who is in charge? Well, we know what the founding fathers who read Hobbes and Locke thought of that. An example of that we can see was written by Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, where the 13 British colonies along the Atlantic coast of America declared their independence from the British Empire. Thomas Jefferson said, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So now wait a minute. Where does government get its power from? Under social contract theory, it's from the people creating it. Well, think about what that means. If the people are the ones who can create the government, then who's really the ultimate authority there? It's the people. They are sovereign. The idea that the common people are the ultimate political power in a country, in a government, in a state, is what we call popular sovereignty. Remember, sovereignty means ultimate political authority. Popular refers to the mass of the people. We, the people, are in charge of our government, not our government in charge of us. Now, if you accept that because governments are created by people, giving up their natural freedoms in exchange for something, and exchange for security, and this is created through an agreement among the people, which puts the people in charge of their government, not their government in charge of them, then you are faced with the possibility of a right to revolution. Well, now what do I mean by that? A right to revolution? Well, here's another quote from John Locke. He says that even when people create a government, there remains in the people a supreme power over that government. Here he talks about the legislative, the ability to make laws, that the people have a supreme power over that. And that if along the way they don't like what this government is doing that they created, that they are either somehow being neglected or being opposed, where they can't trust that government anymore. Locke argues that that power they gave to that government is forfeited. The power returns to the people, and they can do with it as they please. They can reform that government. They can get rid of it. They can start all over again. So if we, the people, end up deciding that our government isn't doing what we created it to do, we can get rid of it. That is a right to revolution. So because the people are sovereign, they can choose to alter their government or abolish it or create a new government whenever they please to do so. So our last question in this lesson is, well, okay, that all makes sense, but what about the people who never consented to the social contract? Originally we have some people sit around and decide they're tired of killing each other, and they enter an agreement with each other to no longer do that, and they set up a government to police them. But what about people that come along later, maybe their own children, their own grandchildren? Are they bound by that same agreement? Or are they back in the state of nature? A baby born with authority to go out and start killing people if they want, and say, no, I was never part of the contract. Are they part of the contract or not? Well, there's reasons to want them to be part of the contract. You don't want a bunch of kids in the next generation being born who don't follow under the rules of everybody else. Well, the way John Locke got around this problem is he theorized that when we are in society and we enjoy the benefits of that society, we enjoy the benefits of what that government does for us, he says that we have given our tacit consent. In other words, like implied consent. We didn't explicitly say, oh yeah, I agree to the government. But the fact that we're enjoying the benefits of that government obligates us to it. Now, there's still the problem that we've never explicitly agreed to the government. But this is about the best any philosophers come up with to explain why we have to obey governments that we didn't explicitly agree to as an original matter. Once we've enjoyed the benefits of that government, we've accepted the terms of it. Then in exchange for those benefits, we have to give up certain freedoms to it. All right, so now let's review. What is the social contract? Is it freedom given in exchange for security? Is it free trade between different groups? Is it work exchanged for pay? Or is it required military service? The correct answer is, in the social contract, we give up freedom in exchange for security. Now, who is the social contract between? Who are the parties of it? Is it between two governments? Is it between the people and their government? Is it between the people and themselves? Or is it between the people and their God? Well, if you believe the reasoning of people like Hobbes and Locke, the social contract is between the people and themselves. They are agreeing amongst each other to then create a government to serve them. That then leads us to the next concept of popular sovereignty. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean that a king has to stay popular? Or does it mean the people are sovereign, all-powerful? Does it mean the people are the ones that choose their king? Or does it mean that elected officials are sovereign? Now again, I told you that when I have these questions for you, we're looking for the best answer. And the best answer here is the second one. People are sovereign. Yes, now with that sovereign, they may choose a king, but maybe they don't. Maybe they choose a different form of government. But what it means is they are the ones in charge to decide for themselves. And what's the strongest cure they can have for a bad government? Can they legitimately engage in revolution, or do they just reform their government, or do they petition, in other words, ask it to change and hope it does? Or can they just simply not do anything once they create a government? The correct answer is the people have a right to revolution, because since they created the government, they can get rid of the government if they want. The last idea from this lesson is that of tacit consent. Well, what is that? Is it explicitly agreeing to a thing? Or is it failing to agree to a thing? Or is it giving a conditional agreement? Oh, well, I'll agree if you do this for me. Or is it agreeing by using a thing? Tacit consent, of course, is the last concept. It's where we theorize that you've agreed to a thing by using it. Because you've let the police protect you, because you've let the fire department keep your house safe, etc., you've agreed to the conditions of having that government. All right, that does it for Lesson 5. Our next lesson, still in Unit 1, will be Lesson 6, about the rule of 1.